The holographic display flickered with an almost contemptuous laziness, projecting the image of a small blue-green planet that seemed entirely unremarkable. Zax Thor Vreen, senior cartographer of the Galactic Reconnaissance Division, barely suppressed a yawn as he reviewed the latest planetary survey. Another mundane classification, he muttered to his junior officer, a tentacled being named Krell, whose translucent skin rippled with bureaucratic excitement. Primitive carbon-based life form. Technology level, barely space-adjacent. Potential, negligible. The ship's quantum scanning array had been methodically cataloging the planet's characteristics. Electromagnetic emissions suggested a developing technological civilization, but nothing that would raise more than a passing bureaucratic eyebrow. Another forgotten world in the vast cosmic archive. What Zax Thor didn't notice was the subtle anomaly buried deep within the scan data, a pattern of information exchange that defied standard algorithmic interpretation. Where most species showed predictable technological progression, this planet's data seemed to dance, shifting, adapting, impossible to fully categorize. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her dimly lit laboratory at the edge of the Nevada desert, surrounded by screens that showed nothing and everything. To an untrained eye, her workspace looked like chaos. Holographic projections, quantum computing interfaces, and what appeared to be ancient mathematical texts scattered alongside cutting-edge technological prototypes. She was hunting something most of her colleagues considered impossible, a unified theory of adaptive intelligence. Her latest research paper, rejected by no fewer than 17 academic journals, proposed a radical concept. Intelligence wasn't just about processing power or knowledge accumulation. It was about adaptability, about the capacity to fundamentally reimagine existing systems of understanding. The irony was profound. While alien civilizations built massive computational networks designed for absolute predictability, Rodriguez was studying the beauty of controlled chaos. Dr. Rodriguez, her assistant called, the latest quantum correlation data is unusual. Unusual was an understatement. The data suggested impossible connections, information patterns that seemed to emerge and dissolve, leaving behind only the faintest trace of potential. Unbeknownst to both the Galactic observers and Rodriguez herself, humanity was being observed. But observation is a two-way street, and what the alien reconnaissance team saw was not what was truly there. Krell's tentacles twitched nervously as he reviewed the final report. Commander Vreen, there's something different about the classification parameters. Vreen waved a dismissive appendage. Different how? The predictive models are inconsistent. The planetary potential index keeps fluctuating. Such fluctuations were unprecedented. Every known civilization followed a predictable technological progression. You could map their development like a mathematical formula. Resource extraction, industrial revolution, early computing, network technologies, potential space exploration. This planet, it was writing its own impossible equation. In the vastness of space, surrounded by the cold logic of quantum scanners and bureaucratic classification systems, humanity remained blissfully unaware. A species on the cusp of something extraordinary, preparing to shatter every preconceived notion of technological and evolutionary potential. The invisible threat was taking shape, not through weapons or aggressive expansion, but through something far more dangerous. Pure, uncontrolled potential. The diplomatic chamber gleamed with an antiseptic precision that belied the tension crackling through the air. Captain Michael Chen stood at the center, a study in controlled calm, his tailored charcoal suit a stark contrast to the flowing, iridescent robes of the alien delegation. The Galactic Concordance representative, Grand Mediator Xelnaga, looked down from an elevated platform. Its multiple eyes, each a different chromatic shade, studied Chen with what could only be described as imperial disdain. Humanity's request is curious, Xelnaga stated, its translation matrix rendering the words with mechanical precision. You propose a mutual cooperation agreement that defies every standard diplomatic protocol in the known universe. Chen's smile didn't reach his eyes, Behind that seemingly casual expression lay a mind that had spent decades studying game theory, cultural anthropology, and the intricate dance of negotiation. Curious, he repeated, the word hanging in the air like a challenge. I prefer to think of it as innovative. The proposal was elegant in its complexity. Where traditional diplomatic agreements sought to establish clear hierarchies and control mechanisms, Chen's document was a living, adaptive framework. It contained nested clauses that could dynamically reconfigure based on emerging circumstances, cultural shifts, and technological developments. To the alien delegation, it looked like chaos. To Chen, it was a masterpiece of strategic flexibility. Krell, still assigned to the Earth observation team, watched the proceedings with mounting anxiety. The humans' approach defied every diplomatic model in the Galactic archives. Most species approached first contact with either abject submission or aggressive posturing. This was something else entirely. Your document contains 417 potential interpretative paths, Selnaga pronounced, mandibles clicking in what passed for confusion among its species. It is mathematically impossible to definitively predict its implications. Precisely, Chen responded. The room fell silent. In that moment, the alien delegation realized they were dealing with something fundamentally different. This wasn't just a negotiation. It was a demonstration of adaptability, a demonstration of potential, a demonstration of uncertainty as a strategic weapon. Selnaga's translator struggled, producing a series of clicks and hums that suggested deep computational stress. The diplomatic protocols were breaking down, unable to categorize or contain the human approach. What the aliens didn't understand was that Chen's document was more than a diplomatic proposal. It was a psychological probe, designed to reveal the fundamental limitations of their own thinking. Every clause was a subtle test, every paragraph a strategic pressure point. We do not negotiate with uncertainty, Selnaga finally stated, a note of desperation creeping into its voice. Chen's smile became something razor-sharp. Then you do not negotiate with the future. The diplomatic channel had just been irrevocably altered, and neither side fully understood the implications. In the observation deck, Krell's tentacles trembled. Something fundamental was changing. The universe's established order was about to be rewritten, not through force, but through the most dangerous weapon imaginable: human unpredictability. The laboratory hummed with an energy that defied conventional scientific understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that looked less like a scientific instrument and more like a living, breathing ecosystem of information. They said it was impossible, she muttered, her fingers dancing across quantum interface nodes that seemed to pulse with their own consciousness. A unified theory of adaptive intelligence that doesn't just process information, but evolves with it. Her team, a diverse group of scientists who had been labeled everything from brilliant to heretical, watched in a mixture of anticipation and disbelief. What had started as a theoretical framework was now transforming into something that challenged the very foundations of technological development. The Galactic Observation Network was about to receive the most profound shock in its documented history. The breakthrough wasn't a single invention. It was a complete reimagining of technological progression. Where most civilizations develop technologies linearly, each innovation building upon the last in a predictable sequence, Rodriguez's work created a living technological ecosystem. Her quantum adaptive network could literally learn, modify, and recreate itself in real time. Incoming interference, one of her assistants called out. The alien reconnaissance systems were attempting to scan the laboratory to understand what was happening. But understanding was precisely what they couldn't do. The technological system Rodriguez had created defied traditional scanning methods. It wasn't just a computer or a network. It was a living, breathing computational organism that could reshape its own fundamental architecture faster than any external system could comprehend. On the alien observation ship, Krell's monitoring systems began to malfunction. The data streams from Earth became impossible to categorize, to predict, to understand. Commander Vreen. Krell's normally calm demeanor had dissolved into panic. The Planetary Technology Index it's not just changing, it's evolving. Vreen approached the display, multiple sensory appendages extending to verify the readings. What he saw defied every established technological classification in the Galactic archives. A technological system that didn't just compute, but imagined. A network that didn't just process, but created. An intelligence that didn't just learn, but transformed. In less than 72 hours, Rodriguez's team had solved problems that had stumped galactic scientific communities for millennia. Quantum entanglement communication protocols that eliminated transmission delays. Energy generation systems that pulled power directly from quantum fluctuations. Adaptive medical nanotechnology that could restructure biological systems in real time. Each breakthrough was a sledgehammer to the carefully constructed walls of alien technological superiority. "We're not just developing technology," Rodriguez said to her team, her eyes reflecting the pulsing holographic display. "We're giving birth to a new form of intelligent evolution." The aliens watching would soon realize that humanity was not developing technology. Humanity was technology. A living, breathing, impossibly adaptive technological organism that was about to rewrite every known rule of scientific progression. The technological singularity hadn't just arrived. It had chosen humanity as its vessel. Area Zhang's latest digital art installation went viral across multiple alien communication networks before anyone realized what was happening. What appeared to be a simple holographic performance piece was, in reality, a meticulously crafted psychological algorithm designed to challenge fundamental alien perceptual frameworks. Each pixel was a weapon. Every visual sequence, a strategic probe. The Galactic Cultural Preservation Council had long believed that cultural exchange was a controlled, predictable process. Civilizations would share art, music, and ideas within strict diplomatic parameters. Interactions were mapped, categorized, and neutralized before they could cause any significant disruption. Humanity was about to prove them catastrophically wrong. Area understood something profound that most humans, and absolutely no aliens, had yet comprehended. Culture wasn't just about expression. It was a form of advanced communication that could penetrate psychological barriers more effectively than any conventional diplomatic or military strategy. Her art didn't just represent human experience. It weaponized empathy. The first signs of trouble emerged in the neural response logs of the alien observation networks. Wherever her digital installations propagated, something extraordinary happened. Alien viewers experienced what could only be described as a cognitive cascade. Their established thought patterns began to fragment, restructure, and ultimately transform. "It's not just art," Dr. Rodriguez observed, analyzing the preliminary data. "It's a form of mimetic warfare." On the alien administrative planet of Vornax, senior cultural administrators began to panic. The human artistic transmissions were doing something impossible. They were creating emotional resonance across species boundaries that should have been impenetrable. A single piece by area could destabilize entire societal belief systems in hours. The artwork wasn't aggressive. It wasn't overtly political. It was something far more dangerous. It was genuinely, vulnerably human. It showed complexity, contradiction, raw emotional truth that the algorithmically controlled alien society had long since engineered out of their own cultural expression. Krell, still assigned to Earth observation, watched in horror as the cultural infiltration accelerated. The human artists were conducting a form of psychological warfare so subtle, so profound, that traditional defensive mechanisms were utterly useless. "They're not attacking us," Krell reported to increasingly agitated superiors. "They're changing us." Each artistic transmission carried layered psychological algorithms. Emotional complexity became a Trojan horse, introducing concepts of individual variation, emotional intelligence, and personal narrative that were fundamentally alien to the hierarchical, logic-driven alien civilizations. Area's next installation would become legendary. a multi-dimensional piece that simultaneously existed as visual art, musical composition, and interactive psychological exploration. It didn't just cross cultural boundaries, it dissolved them. The Galactic Cultural Preservation Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in millennia, they were facing a form of cultural exchange they couldn't predict, control, or neutralize. Humanity had discovered the most potent weapon in the universe. Not a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of transformation. Empathy, weaponized. Dr. Samira Rais leaned back in her chair, a holographic display dancing with impossible economic models surrounding her. What she had created was more than an economic theory. It was a complete reimagining of value, exchange, and systemic interaction. The Galactic Economic Regulatory Council had operated on the same principles for millennia: controlled markets, predictable resource allocation, hierarchical value systems that maintained a precise balance of power across multiple civilizations. Humanity was about to turn those principles into cosmic dust. Rais's economic model wasn't just revolutionary. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of value that could adapt, transform, and regenerate faster than any existing economic system could comprehend. Traditional economic frameworks were static structures. Her model was a quantum algorithm of perpetual motion. Value is not a fixed point, she often told her team. It's a dynamic conversation. The first tremors hit the galactic economic networks almost imperceptibly, a series of seemingly unrelated transactions that, when viewed individually, appeared random. But Rais had designed something far more sophisticated than a simple market disruption. Each transaction was a neuron in a larger, living economic intelligence. On the alien administrative planet of Vornax, senior economic regulators began to experience something unprecedented: uncertainty. Their predictive models, which had mapped economic interactions with near-perfect accuracy for thousands of years, were beginning to fracture. Krell, now permanently assigned to understanding human economic activities, watched in a state of perpetual panic. The human economic system didn't just challenge existing models, it rendered them obsolete. It's adaptive capitalism, one of Rais's colleagues explained during a classified briefing. Not just responsive to market conditions, but capable of predicting and creating market conditions. The breakthrough wasn't a single innovation. It was a complete philosophical reconstruction of economic interaction, where alien civilizations saw economics as a controlled, top-down system. Humans had created a bottom-up, living economic organism. Microtransactions became complex neural networks. Individual economic actors transformed into collective intelligence. Markets became living, breathing ecosystems of value creation. The Galactic Economic Regulatory Council convened an emergency session. Their most sophisticated predictive algorithms were producing nothing but white noise. The human economic model was so fundamentally different that it existed outside their ability to comprehend or control. What made it truly terrifying was its inclusivity. Traditional galactic economic systems were hierarchical, exclusionary. Rais's model created value from the most unexpected sources. A small community's innovative solution could become a galaxy-wide economic revolution in hours. We're not just changing how value is created, Rais told her team. We're changing what value means. The economic attack wasn't about destruction. It was about transformation. Currencies became fluid. Resources became renewable. Value became a conversation, not a commandment. The aliens watching would soon realize that humanity had done something extraordinary. They hadn't just developed a new economic system. They had redefined the very concept of economic existence. Dr. Marcus Alvarez stood before the holographic interface, his fingers tracing complex neural pathways that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. What he had created was more than a psychological study. It was a fundamental deconstruction of consciousness itself. The Galactic Psychological Regulatory Consortium had spent millennia believing they understood the nature of intelligence, emotion, and cognitive processing. They maintained vast databases of psychological profiles, believing they could predict and control the mental landscapes of every known civilization. Humanity was about to shatter that illusion completely. Alvarez's breakthrough wasn't a theory. It was a living, adaptive psychological framework that could understand, translate, and ultimately transform interspecies cognitive processes. Where alien psychological models were rigid and predictive, his approach was fluid and generative. Consciousness is not a fixed state, he would tell his team. It's a continuous negotiation. The first signs of transformation began subtly. Alien diplomatic channels started experiencing inexplicable empathy surges. Communication networks developed unexpected moments of nuanced understanding. Rigid hierarchical thought patterns began to fragment and rebuild themselves in ways that defied all existing psychological models. Krill, the alien observer who had been tracking humanity's development, found itself experiencing something terrifying and extraordinary. The human psychological techniques were not just analyzing consciousness, they were actively reshaping it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected combination of disciplines. Quantum psychology merged with emotional intelligence. Neuroplasticity became a weapon more powerful than any physical technology. Alvarez had discovered that consciousness could be both a map and a territory, simultaneously observed and transformed by the act of observation. On the alien administrative planet of Fornax, psychological regulators began to panic. Their most sophisticated predictive models were producing nothing but complex, incomprehensible patterns. The human approach to psychological understanding was so fundamentally different that it existed entirely outside their comprehension. What made it truly revolutionary was its holistic nature. Traditional alien psychological systems were reductive, categorizing consciousness into neat, manageable boxes. Alvarez's model saw consciousness as a living, breathing ecosystem, dynamic, unpredictable, infinitely adaptable. We're not just studying how minds work, Alvarez explained during a classified briefing. We're creating a universal translation matrix for consciousness itself. The psychological transformation wasn't about control. It was about understanding. Emotional complexity became a language. Empathy transformed into a strategic tool. Consciousness became a collaborative experience. Alien diplomatic channels began to experience something unprecedented. Their communications were no longer just exchanges of information. They had become genuine moments of mutual understanding. The Galactic Psychological Regulatory Consortium convened an emergency session. Their most advanced analytical tools were producing results that seemed more like poetry than scientific data. The human psychological approach had done something impossible. It had transformed the very nature of interspecies communication. We're not just changing how we understand minds, Alvarez told his team, watching the holographic displays pulse with living information. We're changing what it means to be conscious. The aliens watching would soon realize that humanity had accomplished something extraordinary. They hadn't just developed a new psychological approach. They had redefined the very concept of consciousness. The void between star systems crackled with an energy that defied conventional understanding. This was not a traditional battle. This was an existential collision of civilizations that would redefine the very concept of conflict. Captain Michael Chen stood on the bridge of the U.S. Adaptive, a vessel that was less a spacecraft and more a living, breathing extension of human potential. Beside him, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Dr. Samira Reyes, Dr. Marcus Alvarez, and Aria John formed a command team that was anything but conventional. Each represented a different battlefield of human superiority. The alien Grand Concordance fleet surrounded them, thousands of ships that had subjugated countless civilizations across millennia. Their technology was precise, their strategy mathematically perfect, their resolve absolute. They had never encountered humanity. They believe this is a military confrontation, Chen said quietly, his fingers dancing across an interface that seemed to anticipate his thoughts. But we're playing an entirely different game. The first wave of alien attacks came, precision energy weapons that had dismantled entire civilizations. They passed through the U.S. adaptive like mist, absorbed and transformed by adaptive shielding that was part technology, part living organism. Rodriguez's quantum adaptive network was turning weapon signatures into information. Reyes's economic algorithms were converting destructive energy into potential. Alvarez's psychological frameworks were translating violent intent into communication. Jean's artistic algorithms were reshaping the very perception of the conflict. Krell, the longtime observer of humanity, watched in absolute terror. This wasn't a battle. It was a complete deconstruction of the concept of conflict. The alien fleet's weapons began to malfunction, not through traditional electronic warfare, but through a complete reimagining of their fundamental operational parameters. Each attack was being understood, transformed, neutralized, not through resistance, but through fundamental comprehension. "They cannot perceive what we are doing," Rodriguez observed, her voice calm, "because we are not fighting. We are communicating." The U.S. adaptive began to emit a field of pure potential, a technological, psychological, and cultural transmission that was simultaneously a weapon, a message, and an invitation. It didn't seek to destroy the alien fleet. It sought to transform it. Massive alien battleships began to change. Their rigid structures softened. Their computational systems began to pulse with an energy that was unmistakably alive. Not conquered, not destroyed, transformed. The Grand Concordance fleet was experiencing something beyond defeat. They were experiencing evolution. "We are not here to win a war," Chen said, his voice transmitting across every alien communication channel. "We are here to expand the definition of possibility." In that moment, the universe watched. Humanity wasn't just defeating the most powerful civilization in existence. They were rewriting the very rules of existence. The battle wasn't ending. It was beginning. The aftermath was not silence. It was a symphony of potential. Krell, the alien observer who had watched humanity's rise from the beginning, stood before the Galactic Council, no longer an observer, but a transformed being. The rigid bureaucratic chambers that had remained unchanged for millennia now pulsed with an energy of possibility. "We were wrong," Krell stated, its voice carrying the weight of a civilization's collective realization. Completely and fundamentally wrong. Humanity had not conquered. They had transformed. The U.S. adaptive hung in space. Part ship, part living system, part communication network. It was a testament to everything humanity had become. Not a weapon of destruction, but a vessel of potential. Captain Michael Chen, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Dr. Samira Reyes, Dr. Marcus Alvarez, and Aria Zhang stood together, not as individual heroes, but as architects of a new understanding of existence. This was never about winning, Rodriguez explained to the assembled representatives of countless civilizations. This was about expanding the very definition of potential. What had occurred was beyond victory. It was evolution. The alien civilizations that had once been the most powerful in the universe now understood something profound. Strength was not about control. It was about adaptation, about the capacity to fundamentally reimagine oneself. Humanity had weaponized possibility itself. Their technological innovations had shown that innovation was not a linear progression, but a living, breathing ecosystem. Their economic models had demonstrated that value was not a fixed point, but a dynamic conversation. Their psychological frameworks had revealed that consciousness was not a static state, but a continuous negotiation. Krell's report to the Galactic Council was unlike any diplomatic document in history. It was part scientific analysis, part philosophical revelation, part artistic expression. Traditional communication barriers dissolve, replaced by a multi-dimensional understanding that defied previous categorical limitations. "We believe diversity was something to be managed," Krell explained. "Humanity showed us that diversity is the source of potential itself." The transformation was not just technological or political. It was fundamental. Alien civilizations began to dismantle their rigid hierarchical structures. Computational systems became adaptive. Cultural exchanges transformed from controlled interactions to genuine moments of mutual understanding. Area Zhang's art became a universal language. Reyes's economic models became the new standard of exchange. Rodriguez's technological frameworks became the foundation of scientific understanding. Alvarez's psychological models became the new approach to consciousness. Qian's diplomatic strategies became the template for interspecies communication. They had not conquered. They had invited. The universe watched as humanity demonstrated something extraordinary. Power was not about domination. It was about transformation. It was about potential. In the vast cosmic arena, humanity had done something impossible. They had redefined what it meant to exist.